Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Edwards. I am the singer with Jesus Jones, and we are going to be touring Australia at the very end of February and the first couple of days in March.
That you are indeed, Mike. Thanks for joining us today.
Sorry, I missed that.
I said, that you are indeed. Thank you for joining us today.
It's a real pleasure. I'm sorry I missed it. It was well worth hearing.
No worries at all. So, as you say, mate, Jesus Jones are coming to Australia next year for 4 shows with Pop Will Eat Itself, starting in Brisbane on February 29th before going through Sydney and Melbourne and finishing in Perth on March the 3rd. So, what delights have you got planned for us, mate? You got a bit of time to think about it.
You've really put me on the spot there. Delights. Don't know if it's delights. I mean, it makes it sound like we should be bringing, I don't know, frankincense and myrrh or something. But we're going to do the. I was going to say the same thing that we normally do, but it's not quite right. My strap line for this tour is that all the energy you're used to seeing, all the songs you want to hear, but this time played better than they were in the past. How's that? Now we're more proficient.
I like that. Did you just come up with that on the spot, or was that already a thing?
Oh, 6 months of hard work went into that one, I tell
you. Well, it was worth every second of it,
mate. Thank you.
So either yourself or Pop Will Eat Itself would have probably come over by yourselves and done a successful tour by yourselves, mate. So why did you decide to come over together and bring a package deal?
They're a band that we have a lot of affinity with. We've played with them in various guises before, done tours with them. Great bunch of guys, easy to get on with. Plus, more than anything else, do you want to go to Australia? Hell yes. So that's all it is.
So what can Australian fans expect from Jesus Jones in your shows then, mate?
Well, the proficiency that I've talked about, which I shouldn't promise too much. I can't definitely guarantee we'll be proficient, but kind of joking aside, when we go out these days, we know what it is that people want to hear. You're not going to hear an entirely new set of songs from a new album. We know that people are going to want to hear the hits, and we're entirely happy playing those. I was actually talking with someone a little earlier saying that there are songs that we play sometimes in rehearsal that are hard to get through. I'm not going to mention them, but we play through them because when you come to play them on stage, they are completely different beasts. It's the reaction you get from the crowd, the fact that you're on stage playing them, you're fortunate enough to be there doing that, means that any qualms you had of playing songs that we consider all groaners once we're not on stage just disappear. It's we've got no problem playing the things that people expect us to play. I think people may think, all right, there's a band that's cracking on these days. We are not a bunch that we shuffle around the stage, or we don't do a fine impersonation of a bus queue. It's the same energy that we've always had, which I think has kind of set us apart from a lot of bands. Pop Will Eat Itself are the same. They put a lot of energy into their shows. And for us, it's, that hasn't changed despite the passage of years. It's just now I'm hoping, having made the promise, we can play the songs better than we've played them before.
Well, you put yourself on the spot, mate. If you don't, you're going to have people throwing Coke cans at you.
I'm hoping it's an under promise, over deliver, but I'm worried it could be the other way
around. And both you and Pop Will Eat Itself are both playing greatest hit sets as well, mate, which sort of should add to the fun of the occasion.
Yeah, of course. That's why people want to hear us. We know that. I know what it's like from my perspective. If I've in the past, I've gone to I've gone to see AC/DC, and I'm kind of thinking, yeah, all right, I'll take a couple of songs, the best songs from the new album. That's fine, happy to do that. But get to Let There Be Rock, will you? Just hurry up and do that.
So use this chance to go back in time and get to know the band a bit better, bro. So Jesus Jones formed in Wiltshire back in 1988. So what was the musical climate like back then that gave birth to the band, and where did you fit in initially?
Wow, that's Wikipedia, isn't it? Wikipedia, which is vastly inaccurate. I don't know who wrote that, but I need to go back and because it's all kind of over the place. Certain amount of that is true, but to actually answer your question rather than quibble about Wikipedia. I mean, yeah, kind of 87, 88 was the time that the band kind of really took off in a number of ways, like getting new members into the band and getting a new direction. But the scene then was very kind of fractured. You had rock bands, most of whom at that point were trying to sound like the Velvet Underground. And you had hip hop, which had been going for kind of 2, 3, 4 years, at least in a very kind of very strong way, starting to become overground. And that was really exciting. But crucially, to be in London at that point, you had the birth of acid house, and 88 was really its kind of absolute peak year. And there I am, kind of in my history, playing in bands. I'm listening to all this hip hop left, right, and center. Jen and I, the drummer, we're going out and we're going to acid house clubs, places where there's so much dry ice you have to find your way to the toilet by moving your hands along the walls. The time. So I've got all that going on at the same time, and it just seemed so obvious to me, as it probably does in retrospect, talking to your audience now. Why not combine them all? And it was I was really keen to do that because we're a struggling band. We haven't made any impression on anyone anywhere. And it really helped to define us because very, very few people, with the exception of the likes of Popolitito, The Shaman, Age of Chance, very few people were doing that. So it made it really easy to kind of to set us apart from all the other stuff that was going on. So that kind of climate, that musical climate at the time, plus my determination to try and make a mark, is really what set us on the road, and ultimately is why I'm talking to you now.
So you mentioned that those styles that you put together back then weren't necessarily popular, and they certainly weren't supposed to fit with each other. So how did you actually refine your sound, mate? Like, did you just throw everything against the wall and see what stayed there, I guess? Or did you be more meticulous? Did you have a plan in mind?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. What I do know is that I did everything on the basis of, does this feel good to do it? If I'm sampling this riff off a record, if I'm playing that bit of guitar over the top of it, is that good? Does that make me feel good when I do it? And that was my first impulse. That's the first thing I'm working with. Next is kind of, does it fit into this kind of overall structure that I have, which is I do want us to be this hybrid. So are we just a straightforward rock band if I release this song as it is, or can I mess things around? But like I said, it has to start with, does it make me feel good to perform this piece of music?
That sound that you created, mate, was a big part of what became the alternative dance scene in the early 1990s. So at that time, could you feel the change that you helped create at that time, or was it sort of you wrapped up in what was going on?
Yeah, I could see a change because we'd started out down that route, and I think it was around about the time we released Liquidizer. Soon after that, and I'm not saying the two events are linked, but then all that kind of Manchester stuff happened when you had all these bands from Manchester just using the same shuffle beat all the time, and that was the kind of indie dance thing. So I think we noticed what was going on early, did something about it, and then definitely the kind of the scene followed after that. The doors were kind of open for a load of other people who, in my view, were not necessarily as inspired. They just kind of did something because it was fashionable. They didn't have that kind of that structure, that set of guidelines that I had. But, amidst that, there was some really good stuff. I was always a fan of the Happy Mondays, and I thought they set themselves apart very well doing their own thing. So, there was that kind of that zeitgeist. There was that feel in the times where good bands made good music.
Now, you guys have been in the music industry for more than 35 years now, mate. Like, although you started off like pioneering in a lot of ways, but there's been so many changes in the music industry over those 35 years. Like, have you been a band that sort of tried to change and move with them, or have you sort of always gone in your own direction?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's kind of somewhere between the two. I mean, the music industry has changed to such an extent that I have absolutely no understanding of it whatsoever anymore. As a result, I have to rely on that same thing. what when I come to write a piece of music, what is it that I want to do? What is it that makes me feel good doing? That said, I don't just listen to the music that I listened to in 1988. You know, I'm always listening to new stuff. And I find as music changes, I tend to change my tastes as well, or at least add to my tastes. So yeah, we change, and the sound of what we do changes. But I think it probably has come to that point in my life where it gets increasingly difficult to do something that is radically new.
That's not right.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's why we release less and less music, because there's always that there's often a depressing moment partway through writing a song where I think, yeah, I've probably done this. I have a theory actually to explain this, and my theory is that there comes to a point in any artist's career where you just kind of rewrite the same song that you do. Yeah, I've heard it happen to U2. I've heard it happen to the Foo Fighters. And you know, the last time before last, actually, I wrote something. I played it to my wife, and she said, "Yeah, that's the Jesus Jones song."
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's problematic when you realize you're writing the Jesus Jones song, or you're writing the Foo Fighters song, or you're writing the U2 song. There comes a point in most artists' career where it's very hard to break out of that, and you've got to really, really try, and often it's not successful.
This next question I find interesting from a personal point of view, mate. Like I'm on one side of the music industry and you're on the other, but over the last, say, 20 or 30 years, what do you see as some of the biggest changes in the music industry? Like from where I am, I think it's becoming more cutthroat and more bands are less and less supportive of each other on the level anyway that I'm at. But what are some of the biggest things that you're seeing?
Yeah, I wouldn't know about that kind of thing at all. The thing for me is is actually the kind of democratization of music, in the way that music is so much easier to make now. I mean, when I think about, there's so much of Liquidizer was recorded on or demoed at least on a 4-track cassette recorder, whereas now, you know, on this laptop I'm speaking to you from, I could do a 96-piece orchestra with a 5-piece rock band if I wanted to, no problem. So there's the creation of music, but also the avenues for release. I mean, you know, anyone can. It's very easy to get stuff on Spotify and get it out there and pick up a following, which is only a good thing. It was very much harder in my day to get a record deal and then have a record company support you and become successful. That said, I think the plus side of the system I worked with in the old days is when you had a record company behind you, you had an entire corporation who were dedicated to trying to make you successful. The Spotify thing, yeah, great, you can get stuff out to the public, but the public have to know about you, and that is a huge job of work right there. So I think it's harder to become successful. It's obviously far, far harder to make a living of music these days. So I actually think it was easier in a way in my day, once you had that record deal, to have success. It's easier to make music now, it's easier to get it out there, but it's harder to have success with it.
Most definitely. Before we let you go, mate, we started a new thing with Heavy with the people that we interview just to help our listeners get to know the band a bit more, I guess. But we've started 3 separate Spotify playlists. So using only songs of your own, give us a song for a playlist to get the party started, one for a playlist to save your marriage, and one for a playlist that could potentially end your marriage.
Oh my God. To get the party started. Well, I mean, I'm going to pick Info Frico because that's the first song that kind of got the party started for us. It is a good party starting song. What was the next one I need to do?
Save Your Marriage.
Save My Marriage. Oh my God, because that's not the kind of song that I write. Yeah, a track off our album London called The Princess of My Heart. We'll go for that. Radically different for a Jesus Jones song. And the song to end my marriage, one of the last things I wrote, actually, a song called Still Smiling, not on Spotify, so that could be problematic. My wife really hates that song. She thinks it's me complaining about my life. It isn't. Let me give you an alternative one. in case that's not going to be possible for the Spotify playlist. A song to end my marriage. Well, my wife is not going to like the miserable stuff. I'm going to go for Spiral off Perverse. Very dark, very heavy, and definitely not my wife's taste. If I said that's what I was all about, then I don't know, we might have words.
We'll hope she doesn't listen to this then, mate, and you stay happily married for the remainder of your years.
Thank you very much.
No worries at all, mate. Well, thanks very much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, mate. Jesus Jones out here from February the 29th next year, starting in Brisbane. So I might just pop along to the Brisbane show, mate, and have myself a night out.
Oh, fantastic. That'll be great. I look forward to it.
You're easy, brother. All right, mate. You take care of yourself until then, and we'll catch you in Brizzy.
All right, fantastic. See you soon.